The cargo freighter Peaceful Dawn drifted through the asteroid field like a wounded bird, its hull scarred and patched from countless journeys across hostile space. Captain Sarah Chen watched the navigation display with tired eyes, noting how the ship's outdated sensors struggled to map the floating rocks around them. This was supposed to be the safe route to the mining colonies of Kepler 442, but in her 15 years of hauling cargo across the galaxy, Sarah had learned that no route was truly safe for human vessels. The bridge was cramped and functional, built for efficiency rather than comfort. Her crew of 12 was small by galactic standards, but humans had always made do with less. The Peaceful Dawn carried medical supplies, food processors, and mining equipment to the outer colonies, nothing glamorous, but essential for the growing human settlements scattered across this sector of space. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings on long-range sensors," called out Marcus Webb, her navigation officer. The young man frowned at his console, adjusting settings that hadn't been updated in a decade. "Could be ships, but the signature is odd." Sarah moved to his station, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck plates. The artificial gravity was running at 60% to conserve power, making every step feel lighter than it should. She studied the blinking dots on his screen, counting at least 6 contacts moving in formation. "Distance?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer wouldn't be good. "Closing fast from Sector 7. They'll intercept our course in about 20 minutes if they maintain current speed." Marcus looked up at her with concern. "Should I signal the colonies? Let them know we might be delayed?" Sarah considered their options. The human colonies were still 3 days away at their current pace, and their ancient communication array would take hours to reach them. Whatever was approaching would be on them long before help could arrive. She'd seen this scenario play out before with other human ships. Pirates and raiders loved to target the slow, supposedly defenseless cargo vessels that humans favored. "Keep monitoring them, but don't change course yet," Sarah decided. Maybe they're just passing through. But even as she said it, she knew it was wishful thinking. The approaching ships had adjusted their trajectory twice now, clearly intent on intercepting the human freighter. She walked to the cargo manifest terminal and pulled up their current load. Standard humanitarian supplies, some rare earth elements from the inner worlds, and the usual collection of human-made goods that other species found mysteriously appealing: coffee, chocolate, and musical instruments. Lieutenant Commander James Morrison emerged from the engineering section, wiping grease from his hands with an old cloth. The ship's chief engineer was a veteran of the human colonial navy, though he rarely talked about his service days. Like many humans who worked the outer routes, he'd found civilian life offered more freedom and fewer questions about past decisions. "How's our girl holding up, James?" Sarah asked, noting the concerned expression on his weathered face. "She's running, but barely. The port engine is down to 70% efficiency, and our shield generators are due for replacement about 2 years ago." He paused, glancing at the sensor readings. "We expecting trouble?" Before Sarah could answer, Marcus called out from his station. "Captain, the contacts are definitely ships and they're not responding to standard identification requests. 6 vessels, configuration unknown, but they're moving in a classic intercept pattern." Sarah felt the familiar knot of tension form in her stomach. In the early days of human expansion, ships like the Peaceful Dawn had been easy targets for the various pirate gangs and raider fleets that prowled the trade routes. Humans were seen as soft, weak creatures who relied too heavily on diplomacy and too little on firepower. Their ships looked defenseless compared to the sleek warships of the older galactic civilizations. "All right, people. We might have uninvited guests soon," Sarah announced over the ship's intercom. "Follow standard protocols and prepare for possible boarding. Secure all sensitive materials and make sure the cargo holds are locked down." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. They'd drilled this scenario dozens of times, though Sarah hoped they'd never have to use it. She made her way to her private quarters and opened a locked cabinet behind her desk. Inside was a collection of items that most people would consider unremarkable. A few data chips, some personal photographs, and a small device that looked like an outdated communications scanner. She picked up the device and turned it over in her hands. It had been a gift from her father, a man who'd served with distinction in the Colonial Defense Forces before retiring to civilian freight service. He told her it was a backup navigation computer, something to help if their main systems ever failed. She'd never had reason to doubt him, though she'd always wondered why it was built with such unusual specifications. Back on the bridge, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The approaching ships had increased speed and were now clearly visible on the main display. They were sleek, predatory-looking vessels with the angular design favored by the Kythera Syndicate, a notorious pirate organization that controlled several systems in this region of space. "They're hailing us," Marcus reported, his voice tight with stress. Sarah nodded and activated the communication system. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the lead pirate ship. A tall insectoid creature with multiple eyes and sharp mandibles stared back at her. The Kythera were known for their ruthlessness and their particular hatred of human merchant vessels. "Human cargo ship. You will prepare for boarding and inspection." The creature clicked in accented standard Galactic. "Resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel and the spacing of your crew." Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her heart was racing. "This is Captain Chen of the merchant vessel Peaceful Dawn. We're carrying humanitarian supplies to the Kepler colonies under galactic commerce regulations. We're not armed and pose no threat to your ships." The pirate captain made a sound that might have been laughter. "All the better, human. Your species' reputation for weakness precedes you. Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. We'll be taking your cargo and any crew members who might fetch a good price in the slave markets." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing fear mixed with determination in their faces. These were good people who'd chosen the dangerous life of outer system trading, and they deserved better than becoming pirates' playthings. "Marcus, are we still recording everything on the main log?" she asked. "Yes, Captain. All communications and sensor data are being recorded and transmitted to our emergency beacon." Sarah nodded and walked back to her quarters to retrieve the small device her father had given her. As she held it, she thought about his final words to her before his death. "Some things are worth fighting for, Sarah. And sometimes the best way to fight is to let your enemies think they've already won." She returned to the bridge and quietly connected the device to the ship's main computer terminal. A series of lights began blinking on its surface, and she felt a strange vibration run through the ship's hull. The pirate ships surrounded the Peaceful Dawn like wolves circling wounded prey. Sarah watched through the bridge viewport as the sleek Kythera vessels moved into position, their weapon ports glowing with barely contained energy. The lead ship, a heavy cruiser bristling with plasma cannons, positioned itself directly ahead while the smaller raiders took flanking positions. "They're launching boarding pods," Marcus reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "3 pods coming in fast from the starboard side." Sarah felt the ship shudder as the first pod made contact with their hull. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the corridors as the pirates began slicing through the outer airlock. She looked down at the device she'd connected to the ship's systems, noting that its lights had changed from amber to a steady blue. Whatever her father had built into this machine, it was now active and interfacing with their main computer. "All crew, this is the captain," she announced over the intercom. "Stand down and comply with boarding procedures. Do not resist. Repeat, do not resist the boarders." James Morrison looked at her with surprise. In all their years working together, he'd never known Sarah Chen to surrender without a fight. But something in her eyes told him to trust her judgment. He nodded and began shutting down the engineering systems as ordered. The first pirates came through the main airlock with typical Kythera arrogance. They were tall insectoid creatures with chitinous armor that gleamed under the ship's emergency lighting. Their leader, a particularly large specimen with decorative scarring across his carapace, immediately began barking orders in their clicking language. "Where is your captain, humans?" the boarding leader demanded, switching to standard Galactic as he stomped onto the bridge. His mandibles clicked with obvious amusement as he took in the cramped, outdated command center. "This pathetic vessel barely qualifies as a ship. You humans truly are the weakest species in the galaxy." Sarah stepped forward, keeping her hands visible, and her posture non-threatening. "I'm Captain Chen. We've complied with your demands and shut down our engines. Our cargo manifest is available at the main terminal." The Kythera leader studied her with his compound eyes, clearly enjoying the moment. Pirates like him lived for the terror they could inspire in civilian crews, and humans had a reputation for being particularly satisfying victims. They cried, they begged, they offered bribes and pleaded for mercy. It was all part of the entertainment. "Your cargo will be transferred to our ships, human. Your crew will be evaluated for potential sale in the Outer Rim markets. Those too weak or damaged will be disposed of. He gestured to his subordinates, who began connecting portable computers to the ship's systems to assess the cargo value. As the pirates worked, Sarah noticed that the device her father had given her was now pulsing with a soft green light. Whatever it was doing, it was apparently satisfied with the current situation. She watched as more Cathera boarded the ship, spreading out through the corridors to secure the cargo holds and round up her crew. "Your species amuses us, human," the boarding leader continued, clearly in no hurry to finish the operation. "You spread across the galaxy like insects, but you have no real strength. No weapons worth fearing, no military might, no courage in battle. You survive only because other species find you useful as servants and laborers." One of the pirate technicians called out from the cargo assessment station, "Commander Zixth, the cargo is worth approximately 40,000 credits in combined medical supplies and rare metals. Better than expected for such a pathetic vessel." Commander Zixith clicked his approval. "Transfer everything to Cargo Ship 3, and begin selecting the most valuable humans for transport. The mining corporations always need fresh workers." Sarah felt sick as she watched her crew being herded into the main corridor like cattle. These were people who'd trusted her, who'd followed her on dangerous trade runs because they believed in the work they were doing. Marcus Webb looked terrified, his young face pale with fear. James Morrison maintained his military bearing, but she could see the anger burning in his eyes. "Captain," Marcus whispered as he was pushed past her station, the navigation computer showing some unusual readings. "I think silence." Commander Zixith struck the young officer across the face with one armored appendage, sending him sprawling to the deck. "Humans speak only when given permission." Sarah helped Marcus to his feet, noting the blood trickling from his split lip. The device connected to her console was now pulsing faster, and she could feel an almost imperceptible vibration running through the ship's structure. Whatever her father had built into his backup navigation computer, it was apparently reaching some kind of operational threshold. The cargo transfer proceeded with military efficiency. The Cathera had obviously done this many times before, and they worked with the casual brutality of a species that viewed humans as little more than mobile resources. Several of her crew members were selected for processing, including their chief medical officer and two of the younger engineers. "You humans never learn," Commander Zixith mused as he watched his subordinates work. "You venture into space with ships barely worthy of the name, carrying cargo that rightfully belongs to stronger species. You are prey pretending to be predators." As the pirate leader spoke, Sarah noticed that several of the ship's displays were beginning to show unusual readings. The main navigation screen was flickering between normal space sensor data and something else entirely. Patterns of light and energy that seemed almost organic in nature. The device her father had given her was now glowing so brightly, she had to resist the urge to shield her eyes. "Your father was wise to prepare for this day," a voice said softly in her ear. Sarah turned, but there was no one behind her. The voice had seemed to come from the ship itself, transmitted through the communication system at a frequency only she could hear. She looked back at the mysterious device, realizing that it wasn't just a backup computer, it was something far more sophisticated. Commander Zixith was examining the cargo manifest when one of his technicians called out in alarm. "Commander, we're getting some strange readings from their computer core. The system appears to be awakening?" The Cathera leader turned to stare at the human captain with renewed interest. "What kind of trick is this, human? What are you attempting to do?" Sarah met his compound gaze steadily. "I'm not doing anything, Commander. I'm just a cargo hauler with an old ship and a frightened crew." But even as she spoke, she could feel the peaceful dawn changing around them. The ship that had seemed old and tired just minutes before was now humming with barely contained energy. Lights that had been dim were brightening, and she could hear the sound of systems coming online throughout the vessel. Systems that weren't listed in any of the ship's official specifications. The device on her console gave one final, brilliant flash of light, and then the real peaceful dawn began to reveal herself. Hidden panels slid open throughout the ship, revealing weapon systems that had been concealed within the cargo holds. The outdated sensors suddenly displayed targeting data with pinpoint accuracy, and the engines that had been struggling to maintain basic propulsion suddenly surged with power that registered far beyond their rated specifications. "Commander, Zixith stared at the transformation with growing alarm. What is this? What manner of deception? His words were cut off as the ship's gravity generators suddenly reversed their polarity in the specific areas where pirates were standing. The Kythera boarding party found themselves slammed against the ceiling with bone-crushing force. Their weapons scattered and their formation broken. Sarah smiled as she watched the pirates struggle against forces they couldn't understand. You're right, Commander. Humans are prey, but sometimes the smartest prey learns to pretend to be something harmless until the predators get close enough to bite. The transformation of the Peaceful Dawn was unlike anything the Kythera pirates had ever witnessed. What had appeared to be a helpless cargo freighter was revealing itself to be something far more dangerous. Hidden weapon ports emerged from seemingly innocent hull plating, and the ship's entire structure seemed to be reconfiguring itself for combat. Commander Zixith struggled against the reversed gravity field, his chitinous armor scraping against the ceiling as he tried to reach for his dropped weapon. Around him, his boarding party was in similar distress, pinned helplessly above the deck plates they'd been standing on moments before. Sarah moved to the main command console, her fingers dancing across controls that hadn't been visible just minutes earlier. The ship's computer interface had completely changed, revealing tactical displays and weapon systems that belonged on a military vessel, not a civilian cargo hauler. Computer. Identify ship classification and armament status, she commanded. The ship's AI responded with a voice she'd never heard before, crisp, military, and utterly confident. UCS Righteous Fury, Stealth Assault Cruiser, Solar Defense Force Classification Level 9, all weapon systems online and fully charged. Stealth camouflage disabled, ready for combat operations. Sarah's crew stared in amazement as their familiar ship revealed its true nature. James Morrison was the first to recover from the shock, his military training kicking in as he recognized the tactical displays surrounding them. Sweet Mother of Earth, he breathed. This is a ghost ship. The Righteous Fury was supposed to have been destroyed at the Battle of Rigel 7. Sarah nodded, understanding flooding through her as suppressed memories began to surface. My father was Captain Richard Chen of the Solar Defense Force. When the war ended, certain assets were reassigned to civilian cover identities. The Peaceful Dawn was never a cargo ship. She was a deep cover reconnaissance and strike vessel. The gravity returned to normal, sending the Kythera pirates crashing to the deck in tangled heaps. Sarah's crew quickly moved to secure the fallen boarders while she continued her examination of the ship's true capabilities. The cargo holds she'd thought contained medical supplies and mining equipment were actually filled with enough firepower to level a small moon. Captain, Marcus called out from his station, blood still trickling from his split lip but his voice filled with excitement. We're getting responses from the pirate ships. They're demanding to know what we've done to their boarding party. Sarah activated the main communication system, noting that even the bridge's visual displays had upgraded themselves. Where once there had been grainy, outdated screens, she now had access to tactical holographs and real-time combat analysis systems that would have impressed a fleet admiral. Kythera vessels. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UCS Righteous Fury. Your boarding party has been secured and will be treated according to military law. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawing to a safe distance before we demonstrate why human ships are built the way they are. The response from the pirate commander came immediately, his voice shrill with rage and confusion.
This is impossible.
Our intelligence clearly identified your vessel as an unarmed cargo hauler. Humans do not possess military technology of this sophistication. Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the tactical display show the positions of all 6 pirate vessels. The Righteous Fury sensors were now operating at full capacity, providing detailed analysis of each ship's capabilities, weaknesses, and current defensive postures. Your intelligence was correct, Commander. We are cargo haulers, farmers, merchants, and colonists, but we're also the descendants of a species that spent most of its history fighting each other with increasingly deadly weapons. When we finally made it to space, we brought some very hard-earned lessons with us. James Morrison had taken his position at the engineering console, marveling at the power output readings he was seeing. Captain, we're running at 400% of our supposed maximum capacity. The fusion reactors we've been using are apparently just the backup systems. The main power plant is something I've never seen before. Quantum cascade reactors, Sarah replied, the knowledge coming to her from memories she hadn't known she possessed. Your father briefed you on this ship's capabilities before his death? but the memories were blocked until the ship's security systems confirmed hostile contact. She turned to address her crew, who were staring at her with a mixture of awe and confusion. I know this is a lot to process, but we need to focus on the immediate situation. We have 6 pirate ships surrounding us, and they're not going to be impressed by revelations alone. The tactical display showed the pirate formation beginning to spread out, obviously preparing for combat now that their easy prey had revealed itself to be something far more dangerous. The lead cruiser was charging its plasma cannons while the smaller raiders moved to flanking positions. "Warning shots?" James asked, his hands hovering over what were apparently the ship's primary weapon controls. Sarah considered the question. The pirates had boarded her ship with the intention of killing her crew and selling the survivors into slavery. They had forfeited any right to gentle treatment the moment they had threatened civilian lives. Negative. These creatures prey on civilian vessels and enslave innocent people. We're going to send a message that will reach every pirate gang in this sector. She activated the ship's targeting systems, watching as the tactical display locked onto each of the 6 enemy vessels. All weapons maximum charge. Target their engines and life support systems. We want survivors for questioning, but we want them helpless. The Righteous Fury's first salvo lit up the asteroid field like a miniature sun. Beams of coherent energy lanced out from hidden weapon ports, striking the pirate ships with surgical precision. The lead cruiser's engines exploded in brilliant flashes of plasma as its power core went critical. 2 of the smaller raiders simply disintegrated under the concentrated fire, their hulls unable to withstand weapons designed to penetrate military-grade armor. The remaining 3 pirate ships tried to return fire, but their plasma bolts dissipated harmlessly against the Righteous Fury's military shielding. The human ship had been designed to withstand concentrated fire from entire fleets, not the improvised weapons of a raider gang. "Incoming transmission from the surviving pirate vessels," Marcus reported, his voice filled with barely suppressed excitement. "They're requesting terms for surrender." Sarah watched the tactical display as the surviving ships tried to retreat. 2 were already showing catastrophic damage, their life support systems failing and their crews trapped in dying hulls. The 3rd was still combat capable, but clearly outmatched by a single human vessel they had expected to be defenseless. "Tell them to shut down all weapons and prepare to be taken into custody. Any attempt to flee or fight will result in their immediate destruction." She turned to James. "How are our systems holding up?" "Everything's running perfectly, Captain. It's like the ship was designed for exactly this kind of engagement." He paused, studying his readouts. "We're actually operating below 30% of our total capacity. Whatever this ship was originally built to fight, it wasn't pirates." Sarah nodded, understanding more than she had moments before. The Righteous Fury and ships like her had been built during the height of the human Kython War, designed to fight against an enemy that made these pirates look like children playing with toys. When peace had been declared, many of these vessels had been given new identities and assigned to deep cover missions throughout human space. The device her father had given her was now dark, its purpose served. It had been a genetic lock, programmed to activate the ship's true systems only when she was in mortal danger and only if she was the rightful heir to its command. Her father had known that someday she might need the protection that only a ship like the Righteous Fury could provide. "Captain," Marcus called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Colonial Defense Command. They're requesting confirmation of our identity and operational status." Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing the mix of fear and pride in their faces. They had signed on to be cargo haulers, but they were about to become something much more significant in the ongoing struggle to keep human space safe from predators. "Open the channel, Marcus. It's time to let Command know that the Righteous Fury is back in service." The communication channel crackled to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Patricia Hayes, commander of the Colonial Defense Force's 3rd Fleet. Sarah had seen her picture in military publications, but meeting the legendary officer face-to-face was still intimidating. Even through a quantum-encrypted transmission. "Captain Chen, we've been monitoring your situation through automated telemetry. Confirmation of identity protocols indicate you are indeed the designated heir to SDF Asset Designation Tango 77. The Admiral's expression was grave. "What's your current status?" Sarah straightened in her command chair, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "Admiral, we have 6 pirate vessels neutralized or destroyed. 3 Cathara raiders are requesting terms for surrender. My crew is secure, though we have prisoners aboard that will need processing. Understood. More importantly, Captain, your ship's activation has triggered responses from 17 other deep cover assets throughout this sector. The network your father helped establish is coming back online for the first time in 15 years. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The righteous fury wasn't alone. There were other ships like her scattered throughout human space, disguised as civilian vessels but capable of devastating military action. Her father and others like him had created a hidden fleet, sleeping guardians waiting for the day when they might be needed again. Admiral, my crew wasn't briefed on any of this. They thought they were signing on for cargo runs, not military operations. Sarah gestured toward Marcus and James, both of whom were listening with wide eyes to every word. Admiral Hayes nodded with understanding. Your father insisted on strict compartmentalization for security reasons. The crews of deep cover vessels were to be civilian volunteers who could maintain their cover identities without conscious deception. You've all been serving your true purpose without knowing it. James Morrison stepped forward, his engineer's mind grappling with the technical implications. Admiral, if I may ask, how many ships are we talking about? The Righteous Fury has enough firepower to take on a battle fleet, but the maintenance requirements alone should have been impossible to hide. 18 vessels total, Chief Morrison. Your ship is actually one of the smaller ones. The Admiral's slight smile was not reassuring. The freighter Lucky Strike, operating out of the Centauri system, is actually a Dreadnought-class warship. The passenger liner Stellar Princess running the Lunamars route carries enough Marines to take a fortified planet. Sarah felt a chill as she realized the scope of what her father had been involved in. An entire shadow fleet hidden in plain sight, ready to activate if human space ever faced another existential threat. The pirate raid that had seemed so threatening just hours ago was apparently significant enough to wake up this sleeping giant. What are your orders, Admiral? Sarah asked, though part of her was afraid of the answer. First priority is intelligence gathering. We need to understand why pirate activity in this sector has increased so dramatically over the past 6 months. Your prisoners should provide valuable information about their organization and objectives. Admiral Hayes paused, consulting something off-screen. Second priority is coordination with other activated assets. You'll be receiving tactical updates and operational assignments as we assess the developing situation. Marcus looked up from his sensor station with concern. Captain, we're detecting multiple ship signatures throughout the asteroid field. Long-range sensors show at least 20 new contacts approaching our position. Sarah's stomach dropped. If more pirates were coming, even the Righteous Fury's capabilities might be overwhelmed. But Admiral Hayes looked unconcerned by the news. Those would be the other assets, Captain. Your activation signal has brought them out of hiding as well. You're about to meet some very interesting neighbors. The main display screen shifted to show the approaching vessels, and Sarah was amazed by what she saw. Ships that had looked like ordinary civilian craft were transforming just as hers had, revealing their true military nature. The battered ore hauler Mountain's Pride shed its disguised hull plating to reveal a heavy assault cruiser, bristling with weapons. The elegant passenger yacht Serenity's Dream extended weapon pods and sensor arrays that marked it as a stealth reconnaissance vessel. My God, James breathed, watching the display. How long has this been going on? Since the end of the Kython War, Admiral Hayes replied. The peace treaty was a wonderful thing, but some of us remembered that humans have the unfortunate tendency to be seen as easy targets. Your father and 19 other volunteers agreed to maintain a secret defensive network, just in case diplomacy wasn't enough. The first of the revealed ships docked with the Righteous Fury, and Sarah was surprised to see familiar faces among the crew that came aboard. Captain Elena Vasquez of the Mountain's Pride was a woman she'd shared drinks with at a dozen trade stations, complaining about fuel costs and shipping delays. She'd never suspected that the cheerful cargo hauler was actually a decorated combat veteran, commanding a warship that could level cities. Sarah, good to see the family business is still running smoothly, Elena said with a grin that didn't quite hide the tension in her eyes, though I have to admit I was hoping we'd never have to do this reveal dance. Elena, I had no idea. All these years we've been playing our roles perfectly, Elena finished. Your father would be proud, but we've got bigger problems than family reunions right now. The pirate activity in this sector isn't random. Our prisoners have been very talkative under interrogation. She activated a portable holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of local space. Red markers indicated pirate raids over the past 6 months, forming a pattern that made Sarah's blood run cold. They're not just raiding for cargo or slaves, Elena continued. They're mapping our defenses, testing response times, cataloging the capabilities of Colonial Defense Force units in this region. Someone's been paying them to gather intelligence on human military assets. James studied the display with growing alarm. That's a systematic reconnaissance operation. They're preparing for something big. Admiral Hayes's image nodded grimly. Our analysis concurs with that assessment. Which is why the activation of the Shadow Fleet is so critical. If someone is planning a large-scale assault on human space, they're going to discover that we're not as defenseless as we appear. Sarah looked around at her crew. Seeing the mix of fear and determination in their faces, Marcus was young and inexperienced, but he was already adapting to the tactical displays with impressive speed. James had the look of a man remembering skills he thought he'd left behind years ago. Even the other crew members, who had been terrified prisoners just hours before, were starting to carry themselves with the confidence of military personnel. "Admiral, what's our mission priority?" Sarah asked. "Do we continue our cover as cargo haulers, or do we operate as a military unit? Maintain your civilian identities as much as possible, but be prepared for combat operations at any time. The beauty of the Shadow Fleet concept is that our enemies won't know what they're facing until it's too late." Admiral Hayes leaned forward, her expression serious. "Captain Chen, your ship may look like a cargo hauler, but you're actually commanding one of the most advanced warships in human space. Use that advantage wisely." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and the weight of her new responsibilities. Around her, the bridge of the righteous fury hummed with barely contained power, a reminder that she was no longer just a merchant, captain trying to make an honest living in a dangerous galaxy. She was now part of something larger, a hidden guardian force that stood between human civilization and the darkness that lurked between the stars. The pirates who had laughed at the unarmed human ship were about to learn that humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of appearing harmless while preparing for war. The Shadow Fleet was awakening, and the galaxy was about to discover what happened when you threatened the descendants of a species that had conquered their own world through superior tactics and unrelenting determination. 3 days after the activation of the Shadow Fleet, the Righteous Fury maintained its disguise as the cargo hauler Peaceful Dawn while conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation in the sector's history. Sarah had learned to seamlessly switch between her roles as merchant captain and military commander, depending on who was watching. The interrogation of the captured Kithra pirates had revealed disturbing information. They weren't independent raiders operating for profit. They were part of a much larger organization that stretched across multiple systems. Someone with serious resources was coordinating pirate activity throughout human space, and the ultimate goal wasn't simple theft. "Captain, we're receiving a coded transmission from the Stellar Princess," Marcus reported from his station. To anyone monitoring their communications, it would look like routine shipping coordination between cargo vessels. In reality, it was encrypted tactical data from one of the most sophisticated intelligence-gathering ships in the fleet. Sarah activated her private console, watching as the message decoded itself into actionable intelligence. The Stellar Princess had been tracking financial transactions throughout the sector, following the money trail that funded the pirate operations. What they'd discovered was troubling. "James, Elena, could you join me in the briefing room?" Sarah called to her chief engineer and Captain Vasquez, who was coordinating operations from her own ship nearby. The briefing room was actually a hidden tactical center behind what appeared to be a storage closet. The walls were lined with holographic displays showing ship positions, communication intercepts, and financial data that painted a picture of a conspiracy far larger than anyone had imagined. "The Stellar Princess has identified the source of funding for the pirate operations," Sarah began, activating the main display. "It's not coming from criminal organizations or rival governments. The money trail leads back to legitimate corporations operating within human space." Elena studied the financial data with a frown. "Corporate espionage? That doesn't make sense. Why would human companies be paying pirates to attack human ships?" "Because they're not human companies anymore," James said quietly, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. "They've been bought out, haven't they? Someone's using legitimate business channels to fund intelligence operations against us. Sarah nodded grimly. Kithra syndicate shell companies have been quietly acquiring controlling interests in shipping corporations, mining operations, and manufacturing facilities throughout this sector. They're using our own economic system against us. The implications were staggering. If enemy agents had infiltrated human commercial networks to this extent, they had access to shipping schedules, cargo manifests, and defense deployment information. They knew where every human ship was supposed to be and when it would be most vulnerable. It gets worse, Sarah continued, bringing up another set of displays. The pattern of raids isn't random. They're specifically targeting ships carrying certain types of cargo, rare metals, advanced electronics, and medical supplies. They're not stealing these materials for profit. They're gathering resources for something specific. Elena was studying the tactical displays with the eye of an experienced military officer. Sarah, this looks like preparation for a sustained military campaign. If they're stockpiling these specific materials, they're planning to be cut off from normal supply lines for an extended period. A priority alert chimed from the main communication console. Marcus appeared on the internal display, his face tense with concern. Captain, we're receiving a distress call from the mining colony at Kepler 442. They're under attack by unknown forces. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Kepler 442 was their original destination, the colony they were supposed to be delivering medical supplies to under their cover identity. If the pirates were attacking it now, it meant they knew about the Shadow Fleet's activation and were accelerating their timeline. All stations, prepare for combat jump, she ordered over the ship's intercom. We're going to the aid of Kepler 442. But even as she gave the orders, Sarah knew this was exactly what their enemies wanted. The Shadow Fleet's greatest advantage was secrecy, their ability to appear helpless while possessing devastating military capabilities. By responding to this distress call, they would be revealing themselves and potentially walking into a trap. The Righteous Fury's quantum drive spun up to full power, preparing to jump across space in a matter of minutes. Around them, the other ships of the Shadow Fleet were making similar preparations, ready to emerge from hiding to defend human lives. Captain, Elena called over the communication link. I'm reading massive enemy fleet concentrations near Kepler 442. This isn't a simple raid, it's a full military assault. If we jump in there, we'll be outnumbered 50-1. Sarah studied the tactical data streaming in from long-range sensors. The enemy fleet was indeed massive. Dozens of ships ranging from fast raiders to heavy battlecruisers. But something about their deployment patterns seemed wrong. James, look at this formation data. Does something seem off to you? The engineer studied the enemy positions with a tactical expert's eye. They're spread too thin, Captain. For a fleet that size, they should have concentrated their firepower into kill groups. Instead, they're covering maximum space with minimal force density. Understanding struck Sarah like lightning. They're not trying to destroy the colony efficiently. They're trying to draw us out. This whole attack is bait, designed to make us reveal our true capabilities. Elena's voice crackled over the communication link. So what do? We can't just let them destroy the colony. Sarah smiled grimly as a plan began forming in her mind. The enemy expected the Shadow Fleet to emerge from hiding and fight like a conventional military force. They were prepared for a direct assault by revealed warships operating with known capabilities. They weren't prepared for what the Shadow Fleet could do while maintaining their deception. All ships, maintain civilian cover and approach Kepler 442 as planned, Sarah ordered. We're going to give them exactly what they expect. A convoy of helpless cargo haulers stumbling into their trap. Sarah, that's suicide, Elena protested. If we don't activate our weapons systems, they'll destroy us before we can mount any defense. Trust me, Sarah replied, her fingers dancing over the tactical controls. Our enemies have made one critical error in their intelligence gathering. They know about human military capabilities, but they don't understand human psychology. She activated the ship's external communication system, broadcasting on all standard civilian frequencies. Mayday, Mayday, this is the cargo convoy Delta 7 approaching Kepler 442. We're seeing massive explosions from the colony. Can anyone respond? The response came immediately from the attacking fleet. Cargo ships, you are ordered to immediately reverse course and leave this system. This area is under military quarantine. Sarah continued her performance as a terrified civilian captain. Please, we have medical supplies for the colonists. We're not military vessels, we're just trying to help. Final warning, cargo ships. Depart immediately or you will be fired upon. Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing understanding beginning to dawn in their eyes. The enemy fleet was positioned perfectly to destroy helpless cargo haulers. They had committed their forces to a deployment pattern designed to massacre civilians, which made them completely vulnerable to what the Shadow Fleet was actually capable of. All ships, Sarah transmitted on the encrypted tactical channel, prepare for pattern Delta engagement. On my mark, we show them why you should never underestimate a human with a grudge and superior firepower. The Sidor enemy fleet began moving to intercept the approaching cargo ships, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea they were positioning themselves exactly where the Shadow Fleet wanted them, spread out, overconfident, and about to face the true fury of humanity unleashed. The enemy fleet moved with the casual confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. 53 warships spread across the Kepler 442 system, their formation designed to ensure that no civilian vessel could escape once they entered the trap. The attacking fleet's commander had obviously studied human merchant shipping patterns and positioned his forces accordingly. What he hadn't studied was human military doctrine, specifically the concept of the Trojan horse. Sarah watched the tactical displays as the Shadow Fleet approached under their civilian disguises. To the enemy sensors, they appeared to be exactly what they claimed, a mixed convoy of cargo haulers, passenger ships, and industrial vessels responding to the colony's distress call. Even their engine signatures matched their cover identities perfectly. Enemy fleet is maintaining standard interdiction formation, Marcus reported, his voice steady, despite the enormous firepower arrayed against them. Looks like they're planning to herd us into a kill zone near the asteroid belt. Sarah nodded, studying the enemy deployment with satisfaction. The attacking force was spread across millions of cubic kilometers of space, confident that their superior numbers would allow them to deal with any threat. They had positioned their heaviest ships to block escape routes, while using faster raiders to drive the civilian vessels toward their main battle line. Captain, Elena's voice crackled over the encrypted communication channel. I'm reading Kithara Zelanti and at least 3 other species in that fleet. This isn't a pirate operation, it's a formal military alliance. The implications were staggering. If multiple species had formed a coalition to attack human space, it meant the threat was far greater than anyone had realized. The Shadow Fleet might be facing the opening moves of another interstellar war. All ships maintain civilian posture until we reach the primary engagement zone, Sarah ordered. Remember, we want them overconfident and spread out when we reveal ourselves. The Righteous Fury continued its approach, playing the role of a desperate cargo hauler trying to reach the besieged colony. Sarah even ordered some of her cargo containers jettisoned, making it appear that they were lightening their load to increase speed. To the enemy fleet, it would look like typical civilian panic. The colony at Kepler 442 was indeed under attack, but Sarah's enhanced sensors revealed that the bombardment was carefully controlled. The enemy was destroying infrastructure and defensive installations while avoiding the civilian shelters. They wanted survivors, probably to serve as hostages or propaganda tools. Incoming transmission from the enemy fleet commander, Marcus announced. They're ordering us to heave to for boarding and inspection. Sarah smiled coldly. This was exactly the scenario they'd planned for. Put him through, Marcus. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a Zelanti admiral with the ceremonial scarring. That marked him as a veteran of the human Kython war. His reptilian features showed obvious satisfaction as he looked at what he believed was a convoy of helpless human ships. Human vessels, you will shut down your engines and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in the immediate destruction of your ships and the execution of any survivors. Sarah adopted the terrified expression of a civilian captain faced with overwhelming military force. Admiral, we're just carrying medical supplies and food processors. We're not military vessels, we don't even have weapons. The Zelanti commander's laugh was a harsh, rasping sound. Precisely why you were allowed to approach this close, human. Your species' reputation for helplessness preceded you. Prepare to be boarded. As the communication ended, Sarah activated the internal ship's communication system. Her voice carried to every member of the Shadow Fleet. 17 ships carrying over 3,000 human military personnel. who had spent years preparing for exactly this moment. All ships, all hands, this is Admiral Chen. She had unconsciously adopted the rank her father had held, and somehow it felt right. For 15 years we've maintained the illusion that humanity learned to be peaceful after the last war. Today we remind the galaxy that humans are only peaceful when they choose to be. The transformation began simultaneously across the Shadow Fleet. The righteous fury dropped her disguise like a snake shedding its skin, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden within her cargo holds. Around her, 18 other ships underwent similar metamorphoses, their true nature emerging like butterflies from cocoons. But these butterflies carried enough firepower to sterilize planets. The enemy fleet's initial response was confusion. Their sensors were detecting massive energy signatures from ships that had appeared completely harmless just moments before. Several of the closer raiders actually tried to retreat, suddenly realizing they had flown into weapons range of something far more dangerous than anticipated. All ships, engage at will, Sarah commanded. Show them what happens when you threaten human civilians. The righteous fury opened fire with weapons that had been designed to penetrate the armor of Kython dreadnoughts. Her first salvo vaporized 3 enemy raiders and crippled a heavy cruiser before their targets even realized they were under attack. Around her, the other Shadow Fleet vessels were writing similar destruction across space. The Mountain's Pride lived up to her true classification as a heavy assault cruiser, her main guns reaching across millions of kilometers to bracket enemy ships with precision that defied belief. The Stellar Princess deployed fighter squadrons that had been hidden in her passenger compartments, elite pilots who flew ships disguised as maintenance pods. Enemy fleet is attempting to regroup, Marcus reported, his voice filled with excitement as he watched the tactical display. They're concentrating their heaviest ships for a counterattack. Sarah studied the enemy response with professional interest. The coalition commander was competent. He'd recognized the threat quickly and was attempting to bring his superior numbers to bear against the revealed human fleet. But his ships had been deployed for a different kind of battle, and repositioning them would take time they didn't have. James, bring us around to intercept their main battle line. Let's see how their dreadnoughts handle weapons designed to kill Kython warhulks. The righteous fury accelerated toward the enemy fleet's center, her quantum drives pushing her far beyond the performance envelope any cargo hauler should possess. Behind her, the Shadow Fleet moved in perfect coordination, each ship captain knowing their role in a battle plan that had been rehearsed countless times in simulation. The enemy flagship, a massive Cathara battlecruiser, opened fire with plasma cannons designed to vaporize asteroid-sized targets. The coherent energy beams struck the righteous fury's shields and, simply, stopped. The human ship's defensive systems had been built to withstand concentrated fire from entire enemy fleets. Sarah's return salvo punched through the battlecruiser's armor like it was paper, secondary explosions rippling along its hull as critical systems failed in cascade failure. Within minutes, the enemy flagship was a drifting wreck, its commander dead and its crew struggling to escape in lifepods. "Admiral?" Elena's voice came over the communication channel. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation. Looks like they're trying to retreat to hyperspace." Sarah checked her tactical display, noting that nearly half the enemy fleet had been destroyed or disabled in the first 10 minutes of combat. The survivors were indeed attempting to withdraw, but their carefully planned deployment now worked against them. They were too spread out to cover each other's retreat. "All ships, pursue and destroy," Sarah ordered. "We can't allow any of them to escape and report what they've learned here." The Shadow Fleet spread out like hunting wolves, each ship selecting targets from the fleeing enemy vessels. The battle that had begun as a trap for helpless civilians had become a methodical slaughter of a military force that had fatally underestimated their prey. As the last enemy ship exploded under concentrated fire from 3 Shadow Fleet vessels, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The galaxy had just received a very clear message about what happened when you threatened human space. But even as she savored the victory, she knew this was only the beginning. The enemy coalition had revealed itself too early, which meant they were either desperate or confident they could achieve their objectives before the Shadow Fleet could respond in force. Either way, humanity was at war again, and this time they were ready for it. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Righteous Fury and watched as the last enemy stronghold in the sector surrendered. The war that had begun with pirates, laughing at an unarmed human cargo ship, was ending with an entire coalition of species begging for terms. The Shadow Fleet had grown from 18 ships to over 100, as more hidden assets revealed themselves throughout human space. Cargo haulers became cruisers, passenger liners became carrier ships, and mining vessels became assault platforms. The galaxy had discovered that humans had spent the years since the last war preparing for the next one. "Final casualty reports, Admiral," Marcus said from his station. He wore the uniform of a Colonial Defense Force commander now, his rapid promotion a reflection of his performance during the campaign. "Enemy forces have lost approximately 80% of their total fleet strength. Allied human losses stand at 12 ships destroyed and 37 damaged." Sarah nodded, though the victory felt hollow. 12 ships meant over 2,000 human lives lost, people who had signed up to haul cargo and ended up fighting a war they never knew was coming. Each loss weighed heavily on her conscience, even though she knew the alternative would have been far worse. The enemy coalition's plan had been to systematically destroy human merchant shipping while infiltrating their economic networks, gradually strangling human space until surrender became inevitable. It was a sophisticated strategy that might have worked against a species that actually was as peaceful as they appeared. They had not counted on humans' talent for appearing harmless while preparing for violence. "Admiral," Elena's voice came over the communication channel from the Mountain's Pride. "We're receiving surrender terms from the Zalanti High Command. They're offering complete withdrawal from human space and payment of reparations for damages caused." Sarah considered the offer. The Zalanti had been the primary architects of the coalition, using their diplomatic connections to bring together species that might otherwise never have cooperated. Their defeat would send a clear message to any other potential enemies. "What about the Cathera Syndicate?" Sarah asked. "Complete organizational collapse," James reported from the engineering station. "When we captured their financial networks, it turned out most of their operations were built on debt and speculation. Without the profits from piracy, the whole structure imploded. It was a fitting end for a criminal organization that had preyed on civilian shipping for decades. The Shadow Fleet's systematic destruction of their bases and capture of their assets had accomplished what years of conventional military operations had failed to achieve." Admiral Chen, a new voice, interrupted over the priority communication channel. Admiral Hayes appeared on the main screen, her expression a mixture of pride and concern. "Congratulations on a successful campaign. However, we need to discuss the future of the Shadow Fleet program." Sarah had been dreading this conversation. The Shadow Fleet's existence was no longer secret. The enemy coalition had broadcast detailed reports of the human ship's capabilities before their final defeat. The galaxy now knew that human cargo haulers and passenger liners might actually be warships in disguise. "I assume we'll be returning to conventional operations?" Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Partially," Admiral Hayes replied. "Some ships will need to resume military configuration permanently. However, intelligence suggests that our demonstration of hidden strength may actually enhance the effectiveness of legitimate civilian vessels. Pirates and raiders are now significantly less likely to target ships they can't be certain are actually defenseless." It was an interesting paradox. By revealing their secret weapons, humanity had made their real civilian ships safer. The mere possibility that any human vessel might be a disguised warship would serve as a deterrent to future attacks. "What about the crew?" Sarah gestured toward Marcus and the other bridge officers. "They didn't sign up for military service." "Actually, Admiral," Marcus interrupted with a slight smile, "we've been discussing that. Speaking for the crew, we'd like to request permanent assignment to the Righteous Fury. Turns out we're pretty good at this military thing." Sarah looked around the bridge at the faces of people who had become her family over years of dangerous cargo runs. They had adapted to military life with the same determination they'd shown in civilian service, and she couldn't imagine commanding any other crew. "In that case," Admiral Hayes continued, "I have new orders for the Shadow Fleet. Intelligence indicates that our victory here has attracted attention from species beyond the local sector. Some are interested in forming defensive alliances, others in testing our resolve. You'll be resuming patrol duties, but with full military classification." Sarah nodded, understanding the implications. The Shadow Fleet had served its purpose as a hidden deterrent, but now they would serve as visible guardians of human space. The galaxy would know that any threat to human civilians would face swift and overwhelming retaliation. There's one more thing, Admiral Hayes added, with what might have been a smile. The Colonial Senate has authorized a new class of vessel based on Shadow Fleet designs. They're calling them the Chen-class cruisers, in honor of your father's vision and your execution of his plans. Sarah felt tears threatening as she thought about her father's legacy. He had known that peace was fragile, that humanity's expansion into the galaxy would inevitably attract predators who saw them as easy prey. The Shadow Fleet had been his gift to future generations, protection disguised as vulnerability, strength hidden behind apparent weakness. Orders received and understood, Admiral. Sarah replied formally. The Shadow Fleet stands ready for whatever comes next. As the transmission ended, Sarah turned to look out at the stars visible through the bridge viewport. Somewhere out there were human colonies growing and prospering, protected by the knowledge that their merchant ships might be more than they appeared. Other species would think twice before threatening human civilians, knowing that retaliation could come from unexpected quarters. The pirates had laughed at the unarmed human ship, right up until it started firing. Now the entire galaxy knew that humans had spent their years of peace preparing for war, and that anyone who threatened them would face the full fury of a species that had conquered their own world through superior tactics and unrelenting determination. The Shadow Fleet had emerged from hiding, but their mission continued. They were the guardians in the dark, the protectors who appeared helpless until the moment they revealed their true nature. And as long as humans traveled between the stars, there would always be those who stood ready to defend them with whatever force necessary. Sarah Chen, daughter of a warrior and admiral of a hidden fleet, smiled as she contemplated the future. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about judging species by their apparent weaknesses. Humanity appeared peaceful because they chose to be peaceful, but they were never, ever helpless. And that distinction had just saved human civilization from enemies who had fatally underestimated the descendants of Earth.